So how about them tariffs, boys? Fucking, uh, lordy lord. Where do we even fucking start with this shit? All right, so let's just start from the offset. So Trump says he's going to tariff the fuck out of everybody. Slaps down on the table, tariffs about China, Canada, and Mexico. Initially, everybody thinks that's the end of it. Then he slaps his dick on the table and says, "Oh, by the way, we're going to be tariffing everybody else. We're going to be, doing this." Everybody is like, wait, what? And then all of a sudden he says, "Okay, all tariffs are going to be reciprocal. They're going to be based on this metric, and this is what we're going to be tariffing people at." And then he puts out those fucking charts. Now, of course, all the leftists are freaking the fuck out. First they're trying to make jokes about the charts and being like, "Oh, they used Chat GPT to generate this, blah 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 blah," and it's like, okay, whatever, you fucking shit. They're no better than fucking frogs at this point in time. That's how fucking brain dead they are. And I'm not talking about amphibians here. So, sorry, Dale.
Yeah.
But anyways, so then we have the situation with China crop up after, they release those reciprocal tariffs. All of a sudden, China's getting told, like, hey, if you don't play ball, then we're going to do this. And then China's like, oh, we're going to do this. And then we're like, okay, then we'll do this. And then finally, there was this release where Trump said that he was going to put a 90-day hold on the reciprocal tariffs, but then apply a 10% flat tariff to everybody. Now, a lot of people picked that story up and said he was suspending all tariffs. And it's like, no, the statement clearly says that there's going to be a 10% flat tariff on everybody, which I think is exactly where he wanted to go to begin with. I think, if I'm to believe what I've been seeing the past, 2 weeks, I see this as, okay, he went for the sun, and then he brought it down to the nape of the earth as a means of being like, hey, I'm going to scare the shit out of all of you, and then I'm going to bring it down to 100 feet and get you there. Which, frankly speaking, it's a great tactic. Fantastic tactic, to be honest. Because now everybody's breathing a sigh of relief. Everybody's breathing a sigh of like, oh, thank God. It's only 10%. Which is more than what we had beforehand.
True.
So already it creates the condition where the U.S. is able to make money on trade in a way that we weren't making money beforehand. And it still puts a hurt on the nations that it needs to put a hurt on. For example, Europe and China. So already the situation is in our favor across the board. And individual European nations are already talking about signing deals with the United States. For example, Giorgia Meloni is meeting with Trump on April 16th. Per my understanding, Mexico apparently has already had a delegation in Washington for the past fucking month trying to get shit fucking squared away because they're fucking shit bricks. The Canadians are fucking basically bending over backwards saying, I'll take every inch you got. It's one of those things where it's like, it's hilarious to watch the leftists coping right now. Because they think they won. They think they pressured the politicians. But in reality, they really didn't do much. In reality, we got exactly what we wanted, which was the political acceptance of the idea of the U.S. having tariffs. Because imagine this, the U.S. puts a 10% tariff, everybody freaks out about a 10% tariff, and then we're reduced to having a 2% tariff, for example. Well, I don't know about you, but I prefer to have the 10% than the 2%. Just my thoughts.
True.
So now we come to the stock market thing. So everybody is screaming, "Oh, it's Black Monday! It's Black Monday! it's a repeat of the Depression, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so I need to give a little historical context to people to truly understand what actually happened on Black Monday. Because the events that led to Black Monday started 5 years prior in 1924. When Winston Churchill, the then finance minister of the UK, repegged the pound to gold at pre-war pricing, which then destroyed the Dow's bonds, which then led to a cascade of let me actually just simplify it even further, led to a cascade of defaults on debt, which the Germans defaulted, the French defaulted, the Brits defaulted, everybody fucking defaulted, and the U.S. was the one holding the bag. So, Black Monday, 1929, was set up 5 years prior. It was a gradual slope. It didn't just happen. It didn't just occur. It had been set up to occur. It just took 5 years for it to play out. So, this idea that a correction in the market that put a shit ton of fucking shitty businesses, something like 20 hedge funds went out of business because they were leveraged to the upteenth degree in bad fucking money. All that bad money got removed from the market, which then gives room for the good money to expand. So I'm sorry, but I'll take my corrections, thank you. I like corrections. Hell, if it had been a full-blown recession, I would have taken it, given the fact that as our system is currently set up, we need a recession because all the bad money needs to get fucking purged. And purging a shit ton of bad money out of the market real quick, I'll take it. I like it.
That's fair.
So, it bewilders me that these, and again, we'll kind of get into this later in the podcast because the second half we're going to switch it up a little bit, but it bewilders me to what degree these people are either complicit or just fucking retarded.
They're just retarded. Like, let's be honest, they're just retarded.
That's the problem, though, is that not all of them can be retarded. Like, that's physically impossible. It's physically impossible. So there are definitely some of them that are complicit. And my question then becomes, who are you and why are you complicit? Because then that rabbit hole leads to other rabbit holes, which then lead into other people, which then, all of a sudden, I love using Greta Thunberg as an example. Everybody thinks Greta Thunberg is just some champion of green energy. Well, in actuality, if you look into her family, you realize, oh no, they're champions for green energy because they were hyperly invested. They're over-leveraged into green energy. So if green energy isn't mass adopted, they lose their shirts. And that's the point. Follow the money chart.
Mm-hmm.
And Mitch is just like, Do that with the U.S. Shipbuilding industry as well, please.
Yeah. And one thing I think we should address that we didn't get a chance to last week is specifically all the fucking bloviating from these fucking people about the stock market over the last, week dropping down. Well, first off, I think it's funny to say, all these people, all these alleged leftists who supposedly hate capitalism, all melting down the stock market has dropped. Like, oh no, my precious stock.
The reason is that, so here's the thing, is that they're not communists, they're not anti-capitalists, they're socialists, and that's the key thing. Is the socialist brain does not despise capitalism. They just want capitalism to work for them. And so all of a sudden, their 401ks dipped hard for a short time because all their 401ks are mismanaged anyways. Let me just, little financial advice for everybody. And mind you, this isn't even really financial advice, technically speaking. So fuck you at the SEC. Sorry, I had to think of. I'm like, which one is the like what fucking retarded ass government board is it again? But if you're gonna have a 401k, manage your own fucking 401k.
Yeah.
Don't let some company manage it for you. And there are forms, like literally there are IRS forms that you can get that come pre-approved from the IRS that you can give to your company that then allows you to have that money put into your own independent 401k. You don't have to use the 401k that the company provides because the company is providing a 401k that's managed by a third party. Mm-hmm. And if that third party is over leveraged, like a bunch of these hedge funds that just went busto, if they're over leveraged in stupid shit, you're gonna lose money. Period. Right. End of story.
And
it's the same. Like, I'm just gonna use a personal example real quick. I here in Ohio, there's a 401k management system. I forget what the acronym is off the top of my head, but there is a 401k system here in Ohio that all government employees use. That is, if I remember correctly, it's managed by Vanguard.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't want Vanguard managing my money. I'll manage my own money, thank you.
Fair enough. And so, to get into that a little, as I was saying, all these people freaking out about the stock market, and I think you have actually experienced similar, is I always, on Twitter at least, let's be honest, I'm not saying I talk to many people about this offline, but I've asked all these fucking people freaking out one simple question, and none of them have been able to answer it for me. And I think you've asked the same question, and that question is, how about the bond market? What's that doing?
Well, that's a good question. And the bond market did almost effectively what we expected it to do.
And for the record, the bond market is more than double the size of the stock market.
Oh, it's honestly speaking, if you take into effect the shadow banking industry, the bond market's probably even 3 or 4 times the stock market.
Right.
Like, the bond market that we see is not the only bond market. I just want people to be clear on that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit that goes on in the background.
All right.
Now, here's the thing, is that the bond market, and mind you, the Fed, a lot of people think the Fed cares about the stock market.
No.
The stock market could crash tomorrow and the Fed is going to be like, whatever.
It cares about the bond market.
They care about the bond market. And what happened with the bond market? Okay, so the bond market went and did something very interesting. The bond market dropped a few points as countries were moving from 10 and 30-year bonds to 6-month and 2-year bonds. The vast majority moved into 2 years, but some did move into 6. And the vast majority of the bonds that were gotten rid of were 10-year bonds, which I can tell you exactly what nation was getting rid of those. They like to drink tea. Because they prefer 10-year bonds. Now, what this created was the impetus for the bond market to actually stabilize a little bit. So it didn't drop as much as people thought it should. But then the yield curve, which is, from 1 month to 30 years, which that is the range in which bonds are sold. From 1 month to 30 year, the slope normalized. It flattened out at the low at the young point, and it curved way the fuck up at the old point. So all of a sudden, 6-month bonds normalized with 2-year and 3-year and so on and so forth. And then fucking 30-year bonds shot up in yield like a motherfucker.
So
But here's the thing.
for those listening who might not know, can you briefly explain what the bond market had been like before? Like what were the conditions like before this?
Okay. So this is the bond market in its current form is actually what the bond market is supposed to look like. In previous times, the bond market was, you had lower yields on your old debt and you had higher yields on your young debt. That's an inverted bond market. That's not something. That's a bad situation. Mm-hmm. You don't want your young debt pulling in a higher yield because you have to pay out more money faster.
Right.
Whereas if your old debt is bringing in more money, it means you have more time to service that debt. And so what you end up having is in the current time period, everybody has offloaded their 30 and 10-year bonds and moved into the 2s and 6s. Well, now they're getting gypped because now the yield curve has normalized. For the most part. It's not completely normalized, but it's pretty normalized at this point. Far and away normalized compared to what it was previously. And so what it does is it creates a situation where now all of these people either have to make the jump again into 30-year bonds in order to get the better yield, which then gives the U.S. time, and the Fed and the Treasury specifically time, to start taxing this debt the way they want to, which we've talked about the bifurcation of the dollar, or they stick with the lower yield, which the U.S. can still service. See, the whole point was, and this was the attempt made by the Brits and other nations, is that they were trying to force the situation where the U.S. couldn't service the debt. And mind you, if the U.S. couldn't service the debt and had to default on the debt, that's a huge blow to the United States. But the problem was that the yields on the short term did not go up the way they thought they were. They didn't fucking move, basically. They dropped a little bit, came back up a little bit, but basically they stayed stable. And during this kind of movement within the stock market, that scared the shit out of a lot of people. All of us who knew what the fuck was going on and had an idea of who was going to do what and so on and so forth are sitting there fucking laughing. I can only imagine how many cigars Tom Luongo smoked that day, to be honest.
Indeed.
But the fact of the matter is that these people, they tried to make their plays failed, and now they have to make the decision. Do we stay at the 2-year, get less money for our money, or do we move back into the 30-year, which at this point in time, even the Brits would be tempted to move into the 30-year for that kind of yield, and basically concede the field to the Americans. That's kind of what's going on now. Now, again, when we bifurcate the dollar between domestic and international, that's going to hurt them a lot, because they're not going to be able to. They're going to be paying an 11 or 12% premium. It's probably going to be closer to 9%, but whatever. I'm trying to embellish a little bit just to fuck with the Brits. If they're paying that high of a premium on dollars, and they're forced into actually, paying for their money instead of getting it for free now, they're fucked. They can't fucking do that. They just can't. They're already fucking losing hand over fist when it comes to everything else. How the fuck are they actually going to afford to actually pay for their dollars? Now, there was an interesting thing, and this adds on to it. There was an interesting thing because apparently Xi Jinping has ordered the Chinese central bank that they are to cease buying of U.S. debt. Now, this is a power move by China to scare the U.S. bond market, but I don't think it's going to work the way they think it is. Because at the end of the day, the Chinese had already offloaded so much of our debt. It was unfucking real. Since I believe it was 2023 when they started offloading, if I remember correctly, they've offloaded something like $500 million or $500 billion in U.S. debt. That's a lot of fucking dosh to move. And who are the people majorly buying it? The Europeans. Which then tells us that, oh, wait, yeah, that's right. The Brits are currently holding somewhere around $1.2 to $1.3 trillion in U.S. debt. Now, of course, this isn't taking into account. This is only the bond market, not the shadow banking market. So the shadow banking market will never have a good idea of. The black market always exists for everything. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is that on the whole, I'm sitting here and I'm like, yeah, and this is going to benefit the U.S. just as much as it's going to benefit China. China's not throwing money into U.S. debt. They're not trying to, play around with multiple currencies when it comes to the U.S. dollar versus the yuan. And mind you, the capital controls and everything. See, this is what a lot of people don't understand is the capital controls that the Chinese have. We're trying to get to the point where we can have soft versions of Chinese capital controls. We're trying to close off the U.S. capital account. We're trying to close it off to regulate it in like a drip. When you go to the hospital, you get those IV drips that they have that release medicine over the course of a couple hours and whatnot, and they flow very slowly. That's what we're trying to do with the U.S. dollar market. So our capital account, we're trying to squeeze that closed as much as possible. Still let money out into the markets and everything, but close it off just enough that it puts a squeeze on everybody else. And we're like, we're cool. We don't give a fuck. And this also plays into the whole concept of gold back tips and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, everything that's happening right now, I'm happy with. I was impressed. I was like, holy shit, the Mad Lads actually fucking did it. I wasn't expecting this early of a normalization of I was expecting the yield curve of the bond market to get normalized next year. I wasn't expecting it this soon. It's only been, fucking 3 months?
Yep.
And they've already normalized the fucking bond market? Are you fucking kidding me? Can you imagine what these motherfuckers are going to have done in 6 months?
Yep.
Like this time next year, it could be a situation where we, soft annex Mexico as our fucking low-tech industrial base, and we're literally sitting here like, we just fucked everybody. And we are never going to have to put ourselves in that position ever again. Holy shit. So I do want to cover one little thing in regards to trade flows, because somebody posted something retarded and was talking about how all these consumer goods come from China and everything that we utilize, and I'm like, okay, cool. Why can't we buy it from Mexico? Mm-hmm. And then the reply from the person is like, but I thought you people wanted to produce all that stuff yourselves, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, why? What's the purpose? The U.S. isn't equipped to handle low-tech industry. Mm-hmm. Domestic industry, that's not what we're set up to handle. We're set up to handle fucking mid-tech and high-tech industry. We're nowhere near having the capacity to handle low-tech industry. Maybe in 20 or 30 years, once we normalize immigration and we can normalize all the other stuff, and we're bringing in enough people to actually sustain, and we're forcing people to decentralize rather than crowding into these retarded cities and they're actually going into these places and working, like maybe then we can handle low tech, but we can't handle low tech right now. Why would we even bother?
Right. We build
We
like
can bear
yeah, we build like airplanes, not t-shirts.
well, and not just that fact, but the fact that we can't even staff the fucking factories we have here anyways. Like, I'm sorry, I work in security. And so I deal with a lot of different industries across the board. And none of these places have enough workers. None of them. Like I can't tell you how many more people they're looking for inside right now. Where I work. I'm contracted to a place. I'm attached, I'm a contractor for a company, and that company is still hiring people. They probably need at least another 5 or 10 guys just in the one department that I know of. And yet they're sitting here thinking like we actually want to shoot ourselves in the foot?
Apparently.
No. We just want to normalize trade flows. And how we normalize trade flows is by getting rid of trade deficits. Because if we get rid of trade deficits, then trade flows normalize. Because if everybody's on an equal footing when it comes to trade, then at that point in time, everybody's happier. Because here's the problem, and I'm gonna use China for this example because of everybody knows a decent amount of different things about China. But China has the whole thing about ghost cities. And I hate hearing rightoids talk about ghost cities as if this is, just some random thing that the Chinese do. No, it's all calculated. It's all on purpose. They build the city or the building,
Aren't they there basically just to be collateral for loans?
Yes, that's the whole point. Is that people will have cash, but they don't have enough cash to get loans because there's only two things that you can put up as collateral for loans in China. It's either property or cash. And if the cash, I think cash collateral in China is like 75% or higher. So if you need $1 million, you're going to need 750,000 yuan to get that $1 million. Or you can go buy the $200,000 property and use that as collateral to get the $1 million loan, and they're fine with that. Because the whole, flawed, unfortunately, concept that property always goes up in value. So overall, people need to understand, and especially the rightoids, because I use the term rightoid properly. You're fucking retarded, and you need to learn something, kid. But the rightoids need to learn that they don't know jack shit about China and why they do what they do. But then also you have the leftists who need to stop romanticizing China. Because, for example, China economically is fucked right now. Everybody's like, oh, we're 30 something trillion in debt. China's like $67 trillion in debt. What do you mean? China is really bad. And they're trying desperately. There's a reason why they want the gold prices to rise, because they've been buying basically the maximum amount of gold that they can buy every year without, causing panic. But then they've also been influencing their regular citizens to buy gold, so much so that they changed the laws in China to allow gold to be used as collateral for loans. So they're pushing people to buy gold so that it's an underhanded way to bring more and more gold into the country, because basically what they've said to their people is, okay, hey, look, the gold, you're going to be able to exchange it, no problem whatsoever at current gold prices. Bring it into the bank. We'll do an exchange to cash. No problem. And so they're in an underhanded fashion, they're increasing their gold reserves on the down low by getting their people to buy gold instead of buying property. Because now the whole property thing has turned into a shit show because, oh, wait, an apartment building collapsed because it hasn't been maintained in 20 years. And so the building fucking collapsed out of the blue. Well, 100 people owned properties in that building, and half of those people, the loans come due, they can't pay for it, so the bank needs to take the collateral. Well, the building collapsed, so the bank's out the money. That's a big fucking problem.
It turned from collateral into collapsural.
But yeah, so, China is, leftists, stop romanticizing China. China's just in as bad of shape as the United States is. At least the United States has the market that actually allows it to fix what the problems are. Whereas China is an export market. They can't consume enough to actually make up for their deficits. They have to export. If they do not export, they can't make up for their own problems. Period, end of story. And that's why the Chinese are freaking out so much about the tariffs, because if the tariffs increase the cost of goods, they're not going to be able to export as much. But at the same time, it helps the United States by being like, we're normalizing trade flow, bud. Either get on board or get taxed to death. And mind you, the U.S. can absorb that because, oh, by the way, the Asian Tiger 5, that's the majority of our current low-tech fucking imports. Same thing with Mexico. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, if the cost of a toaster goes up $5 because I get it from Mexico rather than China, I don't really care.
Right.
Sorry.
Or if your $6 T-shirt at Walmart goes to $6.60 because 10% tariffs on Vietnam. Also, who really cares?
Well, that's the whole point. Is at the end of the fucking day, who gives a fuck? Mm-hmm. We're just winning at that point in time. And again, a lot of people are gonna they're gonna try to bloviate, and they're gonna be like, oh, but the average person isn't buying shit. Like, I'm gonna use myself because I'm the average fucking guy right now. I'm not buying shit other than food. I'm in full sustenance, like farmer kind of mentality. I am literally doing the bare fucking minimum because I'm in a shit financial position right now.
All right.
So, foutois? Like, I'm sorry? Like, no, I'm not buying. Sorry that your company can't make 1 million toasters this year. They can only make 900,000 toasters this year. Sorry about that. Oh, quick question, why is your company so reliant on hitting these metrics? Oh, because you over-leveraged yourself and you took on a bunch of bad money? Oh, woe is me. And that's the thing, is, again, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not scared of recessions. I hate this whole fear of recessions that came out of 2008 because it was bad money that caused the recession. And right now we have a shit ton of bad money in the market that we need to purge.
And just for, again, those of us who may be listening to this show down the line, could you explain what bad money means?
So, okay, so there's two forms of bad money. It's either malinvestment
Right.
or uh, or being over leveraged. So, for example, let's go back to that whole property thing. You know, the Chinese bank. Instead of the person going to the bank and saying, "Hey, I got $750,000 to put up as collateral for $1 million loan," and the bank giving it to them, they put up the $200,000 piece of property that they have as the collateral, and the bank takes it. Okay, so that's a malinvestment.
Right.
That is a bad investment on the part of the bank. And if something happens to that property, the bank is out a shit ton of money, and they can never collect on it ever again. Mind you, gonna drop a little uh, fun fact. This is what caused the fuck.
The recession in '08.
No, Evergrande. Is that what it was called?
I think
The
Everguard.
Chinese Evergarden. Is
I
that
think
what it is?
I
Evergrande,
think so.
Evergarden. Whatever. This is the exact kind of shit that caused that company to go bust up in China, was malinvestment. Now, in the case of 2008 here in the United States, it wasn't malinvestment necessarily, it was being over leveraged because companies so it started as malinvestment and then morphed into being over leveraged because a bunch of companies were in way over their heads when it came to the amount of money that they were fucking pushing around. So all of a sudden you're sitting there, a malinvestment that was, say, $1 billion, all of a sudden turns into an over leveraged position worth $500 million.
Right.
That's the kind of shit we're talking about. Because, say for example, I think in my company, using my mythical company as an example, I think that my company is going to be worth $1 million the first year. So I take out everything loan wise and so on and so forth to get the company up to $1 million worth of value the first year. Okay, so first year come and goes, I hit that $1 million market. Awesome. Now the bank is sitting there like, okay, he did really fucking well. He's doing good. So then I say, okay, my company's going to be worth 10 million because I'm going to expand, I'm going to develop new products and so on and so forth. It's going to be worth 10 million at the end of 5 years. Well, then I take out all the loans and the bank is really pumped and they're like, oh yeah, this is going to be a great investment. And then that 5 year mark comes around and I've only managed to hit $5 million. Well, that's being over leveraged because now the bank is sitting there like, well, shit, dude, you were supposed to be at 10 million. We've got a lot riding on this. What's going on? Money's coming due. What's going on, bud? And that's a big, big fucking problem for every business where they over leverage themselves into a position that then creates downfall. And that's what a lot of companies have done in past years. So you got those two forms of bad money, malinvestment and being over leveraged or having an over leveraged position. And that bad money needs to be purged from the market every so often. Now, are we supposed to be on a cyclical cycle of, recessions? No, that's some bullshit that fucking FDR basically put into place when he created the New Deal, is that they made it so they could control when the recessions happened so that they could manage the bond markets and everything properly and so on and so forth. It's a whole fucking rabbit hole in that regard. But you're talking about, oh, hey, we should have a recession every, 10 years, 12 years, 14 years. It's going to vary. We should have, sometimes we should have 3 real good years and then we'll have a real bad year. And then we'll have like 10 real good years and then a couple really bad years. There's supposed to be a fluidity two recessions that we really can't track. And we've morphed the system to obtain this idea of control, but in reality, order and chaos, they swim together. That's how it works. Take a tsunami, for example. A tsunami, yeah, it's fucking destructive. It's fucking chaotic. Try being under the water. It's like nothing happened. You barely feel the current coming through, especially if you're deeper than, like, I think it's like 30 feet in depth. You'll barely feel the fucking wave come over you. And then at that point in time, you come up to the surface, you're like, oh, what's going on? And then you look over at land, and all of a sudden it's a hellscape. And you're like, holy shit. Like, that's the thing, is like, order and chaos swim together. And this idea that we can somehow obtain some sort of control over it is kind of asinine, to say the least.
Right. And the sort of bad money that you think that is going to be, dealt with, do you think that right now is more malinvestment or more just being over leveraged? Or is it like a relatively even mix of the two?
I would say it's about 30% malinvestment, 70% being over leveraged, because that's basically what we saw with the market dip.
That's true.
All the malinvestment was in the hedge funds.
Yeah, lots of hedge funds being margin called over like 8%, which kind of suspicious.
Yeah. Oh, they went busto hard.
Yeah.
And then also you saw a bunch of companies that were in over leveraged positions that were like, it was a system shock. It forced them to identify, like, oh, hey, we're over leveraged. We need to balance the books, and we need to fucking figure our shit out, but we'll survive. And that's the point. Like Apple, for example, Apple's probably sitting there like, woo, okay, that tingled a little bit. Maybe we should move some more money into the U.S. so we have liquidity. And that's exactly what they did. They moved I want to say it was like $20 million in a single transaction, almost instantly. And that was just to cover some operating costs. And then they started moving money. They've been moving money like crazy. So, we're talking a lot of companies got a system shock that they needed, in my opinion. No, it's just my opinion, but at the end of the day, well, you look at the cookie and see how it crumbles. Does it fall apart? Is it, soggy? Or, what's going on with it? Well, depending on how the cookie looks, when it crumbles, you can tell what the problem with the cookie is.
Right.
And which, by the way, if you want to put up the, there's a graph that shows like chocolate chip cookies. If you have too much flour or too much egg or too much of this, so you put that graph up. A great illustration of the situation with the market, honestly speaking. If you got too much of something, there's a problem. If you have too much malinvestment, if you're too over leveraged, so on and so forth. So, hell, if you have too many employees, there are a lot of companies that just have too many fucking employees.
Yep. Twitter was a good example when Elon bought it and fired like 80% of staff, and it.
Oh,
and
Twitter
with a few hiccups there, now and there, basically it carried on as normal.
Well, look at it this way. Twitter went down to what? Like, it went from like, I forget what he bought it for, like 47 billion or something like that?
43 billion.
43 billion?
Yeah.
And at one point in time, it dipped down to like 18 billion or something, some stupid shit like that.
Yeah.
And now it's right back up.
Yep.
Which, it's like, oh, hey, like, I'm kicking myself in the pants for not fucking dropping money into Twitter because I just wasn't throwing money into the market at the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, fuck, I missed out on that. But that's the point, though, is like, if you were smart, like, honestly speaking, if you were fucking smart on Monday, or not Monday, but Tuesday, if you were smart Tuesday and bought in on that nice dip. See, here's the thing. There's a rule about investing. You do not try to catch the bottom. Don't try to catch it, because all of a sudden you're going to miss the bottom and you're not going to realize you missed the bottom. And then you're going to put your money in way too late to truly actually make the profits that you could. There's a saying, leave 20% for greed leave 20% up and down for greed, for the god of greed. Because it's like, no, I'm not gonna try to hit 30% or 40% or 50% profit. I'm gonna hit 20%, 25%. I'm gonna be conservative about it, because at the end of the day, you're gonna be sitting there and you're gonna be like, oh, I could have made an extra $1 million, but I made $10 million, so I'm cool. Instead, if you hit it too soon or hit it too late, all of a sudden you only make, $2 or $3 million. And that's the whole point. Now, of course, everybody, there's going to be some people that are like, but you make $2 or $3 million. It's like, that you're not picking up what I'm putting down, princess. Shut the fuck up. Now, one of the really important things to watch for, and I'm going to kind of get into a little geopolitics with this. The important thing to watch for right now is what actions do other nations take. So like, for example, there was the whole story about Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan being reoccupied by the United States. There's no evidence that story was actually true at all. No evidence whatsoever. There's no indication that actually occurred. For those who, would be so kind as to actually sit and listen for a second, we're going to pay money to the Taliban for that. It's called leasing rights. We happen to pay leasing rights to a shit ton of nations for the bases that we have across the world. Just saying, that's just normal. So if we do take over Bagram, yes, we're going to be paying money to the Taliban. Get over yourself. So you had that whole story, and then you had the build-up at Diego Garcia. Now, the build-up at Diego Garcia, everybody's freaking out because the B-2 spirits are there. And everybody's freaking out that, oh my God, we're going to bomb Iran, we're going to war, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And I'm like, maybe. There's a possibility. There's always a possibility of war. War is one of those very fluid things where you have no control over when you go to war or how you go to war. Period and story. There's no control whatsoever. One of the classic examples is World War I. World War I is actually a really, really good example of you do not control when you go to war. Because here's the thing. The Brits were desperate to pull us into World War I. Desperate. They had been petitioning the U.S. government for months prior to us entering World War I. They had been petitioning and petitioning and petitioning. I'm not talking like 2 or 3 months. I'm talking like 9, 10, 11. It hadn't quite been a year at that point in time, but they were getting close to a year of petitioning the U.S. to have the U.S. come in on the side of the Allies. And mind you, the Germans were petitioning us as well. It wasn't just the Allies petitioning us, it was the Germans as well. Because the Germans, what they were petitioning us on was to have us stay out of the war. Because they were like, this isn't your fight. This doesn't involve you. This is a spat between us. And the Brits were desperate. And then comes Lusitania, which we now know, and it's been confirmed time and time again. Every time they dove down to Lusitania, they keep finding fucking shit. It's been confirmed that Lusitania was loaded with war materials, which was an explicit violation of international law of the time. Passenger liners were not supposed to be loaded with war materials because it made them a target, and you put civilians. Basically, the British government was using civilians as meat shields. Who would have thunk the Brits would have done that? So there is you know, we did not have any control over getting into World War One. We were forced into World War One because public perception of the war turned against everybody. Anybody who is anti-war in World War One, it was worse in World War One than it was in World War Two. Because at least with World War Two, they had, FDR wanted to get into the war, and he fomented the pro-war sentiment in the U.S., whereas prior in World War One, that pro-war sentiment had not been fomented.
Didn't Wilson also want to get into the war?
A little bit. But politically, he couldn't. Mm-hmm. There was no support for the U.S. getting into World War One at fucking all.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Wilson also arrest reporters and other people that were against getting into the war?
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, he violated habeas corpus like a motherfucker.
Yes.
He did good by his grandpappy Lincoln.
Unfortunate.
But that's the point. Is that at the end of the day, you're talking about two very different situations. But the thing is that right now, current day, taking it back to current day real quick, the anti-war sentiment isn't really there, but the pro-war sentiment is not there at all. And right now, it would take a monumental task of the Europeans to get us involved. Because the fact that the Europeans have yet to get us involved in Ukraine could show you that politically, war is not an option.
All right. I mean, they have been trying.
They've been trying, and it hasn't stuck whatsoever. When Biden came out and said, we're going to do whatever we can for Ukraine, and then all of a sudden the military turned around and said, the fuck we are, that showed you exactly where the political situation was. Nobody was even close to wanting to go to war. And it pissed the Europeans off to no end. And this is reflected in the markets, and this is reflected in the tariffs, and so on and so forth. You notice how everybody's like, oh, China's the true target of the tariffs. I'm like, no, the Europeans are too. Because Giorgia Meloni needed something. She needed something to break away from the Europeans. She was the first European leader to say, I'm going to the U.S. to talk about tariffs with Trump. The first one. And now Keir Starmer and a bunch of other people are trying to get on that bandwagon too. Hell, Keir Starmer tried to organize a meeting with Trump on the would be the 13th, would be this coming Monday, right? If I'm correct. Yeah, he tried organizing a meeting on the 13th with Trump, and basically got told, sorry, the president's schedule is pretty full right now. We can see you on I forget what the following Wednesday after Easter was. I think that'd be like the 22nd or 23rd, something like that.
Yeah.
That's the point, is that the Brits got told, no, we're not talking to you yet. And the Brits are pissed. They're fucking furious. Because they desperately need a trade deal in order to survive next year. Because, oh, by the way, Brexit's official next year. And by the way, the EU they can't get back into the EU because the Hungarians are going to block them. And the Italians might even block them just to prevent them from getting back into the EU. So right now, it's a situation of Giorgia Meloni is going to be the first one to strike a deal with Trump, and the rest of Europe is going to have to follow suit. And what I think is going to happen is that Trump is going to sign a preferential deal with Italy that's like, oh, yeah, we'll set tariffs to 3% for you. And then the Brits are going to show up, oh, no, we're going to get 8% for you. And then everybody else will be somewhere around the 8% mark. Because then at that point in time, everybody's sitting there and they're like, oh, we fucked up. Because all of a sudden, that's going to offer a pretty good surge to, U.S. automobile industry and whatnot, because, all of a sudden, foreign cars are really expensive. Mm. Oh, and by the way, cafe standards might get, gotten rid of, and, the safety regulations might get laxed a little bit, and all of a sudden, U.S.-made cars get really cheap. Mm-hmm. And Mitch is just sitting in his chair like, yep. Is Mitch actually there, or is he like asleep? Did he fall asleep in his chair again?
Likely possible.
He fell asleep in his chair, didn't he?
I've been researching computer parts while listening in.
Oh, okay.
Fair enough.
No, I made a joke about cafe and safety regs, and you didn't say anything, and I'm like, oh, you must have fell asleep.
Oh yeah,
Dad wasn't asleep; he was resting his eyes.
Yeah. Well, not just cafe standards and other stuff. Also, you're looking at deregulation of emissions as well.
Yes. But that's...
Yeah, basically, I don't know if I mentioned it on any of the other podcasts, but for the trucking industry, if they can get rid of like diesel exhaust fluid and selective catalytic reduction and diesel particulate filters on the exhaust, and especially exhaust gas recirculation, you would be talking about decreasing the price of each Class 8 over-the-road truck, basically 18-wheelers, by anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 per truck.
Damn.
Yes, because even when they initiated like the 2010 emissions standards 15 years ago, what they implemented then added over $30,000 in 2010 dollars to the cost of one of those trucks. That each one, the cheapest one of those, would already cost you $250,000 starting off from bare bones for like just a 2-seat basic, what we call day cab, no sleeper section.
Right.
And by now, with all the other regulations they've added, if they can go back to square one, to where you decrease the price of one of those trucks by $50,000 to $100,000, plus get rid of all that. By getting rid of all that extra emissions garbage, you see a 1 to 2 mile per gallon increase in fuel economy on new trucks. Oh my God, Freightliner and every other major Class 8 truck manufacturer is going to have the trucking companies beating down their doors to get new trucks, or modify the older ones to get rid of all the emissions gear.
And if you make trucking, if you make the cost in gas to move things by truck cheaper, you know what that does to everything else, don't you?
Because everything in the United States eventually moves by truck.
Yep. So that makes everything...
Everything gets cheaper. And then also you see where the price of oil is going down as well.
Mm-hmm. And thank you, Mitch, for bringing up oil, because I'd like to talk about that. Yep. Because that is another thing. So there's a lot of people out there right now who are screaming bloody fucking murder. Because one of the things that is getting talked about a lot is, what is the actual price of oil supposed to be? Because a lot of people are concerned maybe the oil market is overvalued. And there's a lot of discussion that's currently being had. Now, there's two camps. It's undervalued or overvalued. Now, I tend to somewhat be in the middle, because I believe that, and I'm going to use the fun number, $69. Nice. $69 should be about where the price of oil should be. Mind you, this is, less than what Russian Urals wants to sell at. They want to sell at $73 to $74 a barrel. And then in the case of U.S. Permian Basin, they want to sell it around $72 to $73 a barrel, if I remember correctly. Now,
can I throw a little aside here?
Go ahead.
About my time messing around with the people that were electric vehicle hobbyists out in Seattle and so on back in the 90s and very early 2000s. When did a little researching as far as like comparing fossil fuel powered vehicles versus electrics. Basically, some of the little things about the oil industry that learned along the time was at least 25 years ago, the break-even point to where the oil companies will decide whether or not to drill a certain field for oil, that the break-even point was whether or not they could still make money off of it with the price of oil being $20 a barrel.
Well, there you go.
I could go for some $20 barrels of oil just about now.
Well, that's the thing is that me and a couple people, we were having a discussion the other day, and Halsey was hosting a space, and I brought up, where the sweet spot was, and he's like, I think it's lower than that. And I'm like, you're probably fucking right. I think there's a good chance that it should be fucking lower. And there's a good chance that Brent crude has been manipulated so hard, because who controls the Brent contract? Anybody?
The British.
City of London. They like to manipulate things. And so what are the chances that they've manipulated the Brent contract so fucking hard that if we were to establish a US-based oil futures contract, that maybe, just maybe, the price of oil might actually be a lot lower than what we expect?
Why haven't we already done this? Because, I mean, the US has a lot of oil.
Why have we continued relying on the City of London for shipping insurance? Why did we allow them to have LIBOR? Why did we allow them to have the Forex trade? And why have we allowed anything with the City of London? Because at the end of the day, there have been shitty people in positions of power.
Fair enough.
So it's an interesting conversation that most certainly needs to be fucking had. Like, at the end of the fucking day, it's like, no, we need to talk about this shit. We need to find out what exactly is going on that's going to allow us to actually figure out, oh, hey, maybe, just maybe, things are a lot worse than they are because of the manipulation within the market. Now, here's the fun part, and this is something that I'm starting to realize when it comes to Russia. Because after I sat down and I started thinking about this, and I started thinking about that, I'm like, okay, why are the Russians so desperate to keep oil within this range? And I realized, I'm like, oh, holy shit, if they keep it within that range, that pays for all transit fees. Because transit fees overland via pipeline going across other nations, they're paid by the buyer and the seller. So they generally speaking, the contract stipulates that the seller pays 50% of the transit fees, and then the buyer pays 50% of the transit fees. And so overall, if they sell the oil within this price range, they can cover those transit fees. So in reality, knock a few bucks off of what they want to sell oil at, and then you realize, like, that's the true price of what they want to sell oil at, which would be, if you take everything into account, that would make it so every barrel of oil that the Russians are selling is sub $70, which then is like, oh, fuck, okay. So they actually want to, they're selling it in this range because they want to be able to cover the transit fees and still make the amount of money that they want to make. Okay. What else can be applied to the rest of the world? And in the case of the U.S., like, okay, why did we want to sell, in the case of the Permian Basin? Because Permian Basin was, we have the, is it WTI?
Yeah, it's WTI. West Texas.
Yeah, WTI.
Something.
The WTI futures contract, it's always traded a lot fucking lower than Brent. You notice that?
Yep.
So then begs the question, okay, maybe the price of oil is supposed to be a lot fucking lower than than it actually is.
And along that same line, the price of refined fuel, such as gasoline or diesel, could be a lot lower as well, minus some regulations. And
Yep.
also, if you could remove the EPA restrictions on allowing the fuel industry to build some more frigging refineries.
Well, the refinery thing has already been handled, and per my understanding, there's supposed to be they're building a new refinery here in Ohio, for example.
Really? That's good.
They're just dealing with state permitting bullshit. But another thing that needs to be talked about when it comes to the oil question is the RINs system, the Renewable Identification Number system. How much of the cost of fuel is tied to RINs? Well, it's a lot. Because when you have to buy into RINs to produce fuel, you have to pay a shit ton of money for it, relatively speaking. So you knock 21, 22 cents off the price of gas by getting rid of RINs, and then all the regulatory bullshit tied to RINs when it comes to fuel production. Oh, wait, your car is going to run better, your fuel is going to burn cleaner, and you're going to have refineries not wasting time on having what the fuck is that? Fuck. It spins things really fast to mix them.
A centrifuge.
What's it called again? Centrifuge. Thank you. Sorry, I forgot the word. But then at that point in time, the they don't have to waste time on centrifuges to mix the fuel to actually blend in the ethanol. And all of a sudden we're not
of ethanol altogether. Thank you very much.
And then we're not burning food in our fuel supply. Thus, the price of food comes down. You see where I'm going here? Like, this is a cascade effect. Yeah. This is a cascading, drop in prices. Which, yeah, some people are going to go bust up. Period of the story. That's just going to happen. Yeah. Some people are going to go bust up. But at the end of the fucking day, it's like, okay, why were you over leveraged like a motherfucker? Why were you mismanaging your fucking finances? Sorry, not my problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like with the U.S. government propping up the dairy industry by buying a shit ton of milk from the dairy industry to then stick in a cave.
Right. The U.S. government sticks dairy in a cave.
Cheese.
Oh, right, right.
They produce cheese, which then they stick into a cave. Which, by the way, any viewers, go ahead, check out Fat Electrician's video. Dale, make sure to put it in the comments section, or in the description. Check out
the government cheese.
Yeah.
Welfare cheese.
Yeah. Not to mention that ethanol is also a energy negative fuel, as in it takes more energy to produce a gallon of ethanol than you get out of it.
Absolutely. But that's the point, though, is that they wanted to make the fuel market uninvestable. They wanted to make the oil market uninvestable. And it's just like, holy shit. Like, when you start breaking it down and you start taking it piece by piece, you start realizing really quick, like, holy fuck, like this, all of this affects a lot. But anyways, at the end of the day, it's all intrinsically tied together. It's all fucking mired in bullshit. And people wonder why the markets are so fucking dodgy. They wonder why things cost so much. And it's like, because they've purposefully done this.
Yeah. If I interject one little anecdote, I remember from about 20 or so years ago, back when cable TV was still affordable, and I was watching C-SPAN one day and watching basically the CEO of ExxonMobil testifying before Congress. And his basic premise was, this was back when oil was still kicking up around $100, $120 a barrel. And his basic premise was, if you got rid of all the government bullshit, his regulations and so on and so forth, along with, you know, including with like the EPA, said, if you got rid of all that bullshit, said overnight you would see the price of oil drop down to $60 a barrel, if not lower.
Yeah. And that's the thing, though, is that this is the whole concept behind Drill Baby Drill, is that deregulate to the point where companies have to drill a shit ton in order to make money.
Now, go by volume instead of unit price.
Exactly. And that's the at the end of the day, that's what matters. And we really need to get to that point, because that's what's going to save us. Now, of course, there's a bunch of people out there that are still hooked on peak oil and who are going to scream about how the market can't handle that. And then if we flood the market, it's going to drop the price of oil too hard and yada fucking yada. It's like, we're building a new system here.
Yeah. Another little anecdote, if you don't mind. You mentioned peak oil. About 15 years ago, I saw like video on YouTube. It was made by the scientist that originally came up with the theory of peak oil. And he admitted that he was completely wrong. He had not taken into account, you know, discovering new oil fields and, you know, new oil deposits and the increase in the advances in technology for drilling. He said, he just flat out said I was wrong. Peak oil is non-existent.
And also, if you remember, about 6 years ago now, there was a geological study that was done on a bunch of the capped wells in Texas that they were trying to explore deeper for new deposits. What did they find? They found that, wait, this deposit isn't empty, and it's pushing out the same amount of oil that it was pushing out beforehand before we capped it. What the hell? And that's when we found that oil is not as unrenewable as we thought it was, because these deposits were incredibly isolated, so there wasn't like a risk of, you know, oil from one deposit leaking into another or whatever. These were in very well explored areas within the depth of the deposit that was being drilled in that area. And everybody's like, where the fuck did the new oil come from? And then we started finding out that, okay, maybe the process for the natural production of oil isn't as long-term as we thought. Oh, by the way, this is, you know, right before we were, you know, we had the illumination of the fact that carbon dating is a bogus fucking concept. That in reality, you know, for example, and I'm just gonna throw this example out here, that, oh, maybe the Great Flood that was caused in the Dryas period, maybe that happened a lot longer before we thought it did. And on top of that, maybe, just maybe, certain archaeological findings are a lot older than we thought. Oh wait, what was that? There was evidence up in the Arctic that, you know, humans were using sleds and whatnot, and, you know, evidence of the use of said sleds to transport across the Arctic area from like 5,000 years ago.
In other words,
just saying.
In other words, we're learning the same lesson again that just about every other generation has had to learn, of course, the human history. In the end, we don't know as much as we thought we knew.
Yep. Exactly. All right, real quick, go ahead and end that segment there, and then we'll go ahead and pick back up. I'm going to go do trucks real quick. So we'll take a break for a second, and then we'll get into the second segment. All right?
All right, no worries.
Yeah, Warhound, I apologize for butting in. I
No,
didn't know you called in. I was trying to cover your ass.
No, I understand, and you're fine. It's just when we're recording, I'm watching the time like a hawk. It's when we're in normal discussion, that's when I get off track and I lose track of time. But when we're recording, I'm looking at the clock like a hawk, so it's no big deal whatsoever.
Oh,
And,
also,
man,
I was also.
yeah, man. No fault with trying to cover for your friends there, man.
No, not at all.
Also, I got a map I want to show you, Warhound and Mitch. Considering what we was talking about earlier with the power base of the ACP, what do you notice about the the Cindy's map?
Ah, yes. Good old Kaiserreich.
The same areas the ACP is active in. Very similar.
Oh, it's almost like I yeah. Ready to enter the breach?
Okay.
But another dollar in the Warhound was right jar.
Looking at that map.
I just
Okay,
love how it happens. I just love how it happens to be Kaiserreich. That's just hilarious to me.
Okay, which symbol is this? Is it showing for the American South right there?
That's
That
the
would
American
be the
Union.
American Union of States. They're kind of like a fascist group.
Yeah, it's based off the I forget what the guy's name was.
Huey Long.
There's a
Yeah, Huey Long.
yeah Huey Long.
Long.
It was up.
Yeah, and then I guess the red area up there, that's what was supposed to be the ACP right there.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then
Yep,
New England
because-
is just doing its thing.
Yeah, the Pilgrims and the Puritans again.
Well, and that's the thing is, Kaiserreich. If you don't know, Mitch, Kaiserreich is hilarious because, even though it's alt history, it's the kind of alt history that's very well put together to the point where it's like they pseudo because you have to look at the Kaiserreich map for Europe. They pseudo kind of played out Europe the same way that Europe has kind of turned into nowadays. And mind you, Kaiserreich has been around for like what, 10 years now?
Yeah.
And the point of departure from our reality in Kaiserreich was that Imperial Germany won the First World War and stayed in power. So basically, the Nazis in the Weimar era never happened.
Yeah.
But not even just that. But if you check out Kaiserreich, I think it's Kaiserreich 2020 or something like that. There's a new mod that brings Kaiserreich into the modern era. The thing is that they based it off the map in 2020, but then a lot of things that occur later, they kind of foreshadow in the mod a little bit, and it's like, okay, these guys were at least 2 years ahead of the curve. Like, holy fuck! Because the mod released in like 2021 or something like that.
Yeah, which if the United States hadn't decided to enter World War I, that very well could have happened.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's actually, I'm not sure if you know, but that's basically the basis for why Germany wins in Kaiserreich, is the U.S. decides not to enter, and then Germany wins.
Well, that's the fucked up part about it, is that the Europeans like to talk so much shit, and it's like, yo, we could have just left you.
Yep.
I do also have something I would like to pose as kind of a thought experiment amongst us while you're doing your trucks. All right. Now, it's obvious that they had to have a dock crew loading those weapons into the Lusitania. And, of course, these assholes that wanted to get us into World War I kept that fact secret for years. So, what do you think would have happened if, say, somebody snuck a camera in there, snapped pictures of those weapons in the hold of the Lusitania,
So
and
I have a question for you.
made damn sure it was the Lusitania, and then they sent those pictures anonymously to a newspaper that was hostile to Wilson?
Well, first off, it would have created a whole shit show, and the U.S. would have been put into a position where it couldn't have entered the war. But then you also have to understand what line was running the Lusitania.
White Star Line.
Yep. And oh wait, White Star had their own pier in New York Harbor.
Yes, right.
So
fun fact, White Star also operated the Titanic.
Interesting.
And also, that cargo could have been labeled as anything on the outside of the packaging.
That's the thing, is that White Star, it was found because there were documents that were discovered shortly after the confirmation. Because, and mind you, the confirmation came, and it was literally like there was evidence to suggest the Germans were correct about war materials being on the Lusitania. And then they got drones down there, they found war material, and they're like, holy shit. And then the cargo manifest was discovered, which then confirmed, yes, there were in fact war materials on the Lusitania. Which then there were documents that were found later because somebody managed to get a hold of some of White Star's old archives, because the Royal Navy still has them, that confirmed that White Star on numerous occasions had made runs for the Royal Navy as a cargo ship, not as a passenger liner.
Yep. You also had the testimony of the U-boat captain himself, who said, the torpedoes he had on his sub, they were rather underwhelming when it came to explosive power.
Yep.
And he only shot one torpedo, and just saw the explosion, the small explosion from his torpedo, and amount of water coming up, and then all of a sudden he saw this big, huge explosion, just like a few seconds later, and things started sinking, and said you could have knocked him over further. He was going, what the hell happened? Those torpedoes are not that powerful.
Oh yeah, because at the time submarines only used lightweight torpedoes. They were, if I remember correctly, the U-boat that shot the torpedo that sank the Lusitania was 18-inch. So they were only lightweight torpedoes.
He was sitting there going, how in the hell did I sink that huge ship with one torpedo?
I was just thinking about this. Since the White Star Line had their own docks, yet these war materials were coming from America, so somebody could have put one and one together and presented that as evidence, but for some reason or another, it didn't happen.
Well, no, the problem is it's offshoring. So what calibers do the British using during that time period?
303.
So, and what happened when the U.S. got involved in the war? They developed the M1917 infield because there weren't enough 1903s or 1903 Springfields and 30-06 to go around for all of the men. And so you have to understand one thing. The Americans, a lot of people don't seem to understand this. It's kind of explored in video games a little bit, but they don't really touch on it too well. Countries used to offshore munitions and other things like that to other countries to decentralize their military production. And so they would offshore to friendly nations. the U.S. was considered a friendly nation because the U.S., what does the U.S. care about? It cares about making a buck. So all of a sudden you have the situation where you have Enfield and you have Vickers and you have all these other companies in UK that have factories here in the US. And so at the end of the day, if stuff is coming out of the Vickers and Enfield factory, well, you know it's going to the UK. But if it's coming out of an American factory, which many American factories retooled to produce British standard pattern stuff, it was a case of, would you know? See, this is the thing, is it used to be so much easier to hide shit. Like, let's face it, look at the atom bomb. Look how easily we concealed the atom bomb. Nobody had any fucking clue we were building it.
And now in the information age, it's a lot harder to hide stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, back then, all Wilson would have had to do to hide it was just tell the newspapers, you breathe the word of this, and your newspaper's going to get shut down.
Well, even if he had to do that. Because in reality, if they just packaged everything as American material, which, by the way, on the Lusitania, some of the crates that have been recovered were American crates. So they package it up to look American, and in reality it's British. And that's the thing, is like, oh, by the way, we had posts in Cuba, we had posts in Puerto Rico, we had posts in Guam and Saipan and the Philippines and so on and so forth. Well, if you have American war material leaving the country, where's it going? Oh, it's probably going to one of our territories. Well, no, it turns out it's British war material and it's going to the UK or to France.
So pretty much it would have been damn near impossible to have blown the whistle on the Lusitania.
To a degree, yeah.
Time.
You would have needed a crew member to go against the Royal Navy and the Crown to come forward to the press to be like, they just loaded a bunch of shit onto the Lusitania that's not supposed to be on. That's what would have had to happen.
Would it have been possible if we had a spy to have done that?
Why would we have been spying on the British? Like, seriously. Because remember, we were selling shit to both sides.
Yeah.
The Germans were showing up buying shit. The British were showing up and buying shit.
Yeah. Just we were selling a hell of a lot more of it to the British thanks to the Royal Navy's blockade in the North Sea there.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, the Germans almost broke it.
Oh, you made the.
So I'm trying to figure out what could have been done
There's
to
nothing that
get
could have been
America
done.
out of the First World War.
There's nothing that could have been done. Because think of it from this perspective. Operation Fast and Furious. Was there anything that could have been done to stop Fast and Furious from happening, other than eliminating Obama and what's his face?
Probably not.
And Fast and Furious, Fast and Furious created the conditions that the border is currently under, where you have overtly militarized forces, or overtly militarized civilian forces that are able to put up a gunfight with the U.S. military.
I wonder if that was done on purpose.
There's an argument that can be made both ways.
Yeah. From what I've heard, seen one other alternate history deal having to do with Wilson to where the only other possible way that might have kept the U.S. out of World War One would have been if you'd went back and to 1912 and convinced Teddy Roosevelt, dude, understand you hate Taft's guts right now, but if you try to run third party and split the vote between you and Taft, that's gonna let Wilson fucking win the presidency. Just sit down and be quiet, and said things settle out where if Taft had been elected instead of Wilson, that's the one other possible way could have ended up where we didn't end up getting into World War One.
Well, here's the thing: Razor Fist did a video on that very subject. But either way, Roosevelt would have run anyways, because according to Razor Fist, they were both progressives. So either way,
no,
they would have had their goals met.
Thing. No, that's the thing is that. Okay, so here's what you have to understand about what you have to understand about the situation between Taft and Roosevelt. Roosevelt did not want the Federal Reserve. He did not want the income tax. And that's the key things that most people don't understand about Roosevelt. Even though he was a progressive, he was anti-income tax and anti-Federal Reserve. Taft laid the groundwork for the Federal Reserve for Woodrow Wilson. Because Taft, as the outgoing president, laid the foundations to have everything put into place, and then Wilson signs it into law as soon as he gets in. Boom, there you go. Taft took all the heat. And then Wilson just kind of sailed under the radar.
Okay, but with Teddy being in the White House again, wouldn't he have gotten us into World War One anyways?
No, I don't think so. Teddy, even though Teddy was a soldier at heart, Teddy also understood that European wars were European wars. There's a reason why the only wars that he approved of were not in Europe. Hell, he didn't even want to get in, like during the time period, you had the whole shit going down in fucking in Africa with West Africa and whatnot. And even though Liberia is technically a proxy state of the United States, Teddy Roosevelt didn't want anything to do with it because it was to do with the French, and he didn't want to have any entanglements with the French.
Hmm. So basically, our best option would have been to talk Taft into not running and to let Roosevelt.
No. You let Taft win. You have Roosevelt chill the fuck out for a second. Taft goes in. He beats Woodrow Wilson because even though Taft wasn't a great guy, he was a half decent president. And Taft wasn't politically in the position to actually initiate a Federal Reserve and the income tax and stuff like that. He wasn't in the position to do it. Wilson was in the position to do it because Wilson, it was a popular concept with the within the party. But Taft wasn't in the position. So if Taft sits, or if Roosevelt sits the fuck down, takes a second, lets Taft win, let Taft fucking do his second term, and then runs against Taft in a primary, replace Taft, and then runs against Wilson because Wilson obviously would have tried to fucking run again. Roosevelt beats out Wilson. It's the same concept that you have going on here with that you had going on with Trump and Biden and so on and so forth. At the end of the fucking day, when Tulsi Gabbard tried to run against fucking Hillary Clinton, it's like, okay, cool. And then it went to shit.
She didn't run against Clinton. She ran against Biden 4 years after.
Tulsi Gabbard?
Yeah. She ran in 2020. Not 2016 was Hillary Clinton. 2020 was allegedly Biden. Or Biden's corpse, let's say.
No. I'm going back to 2016.
Oh, she ran in 2016? Didn't she endorse Bernie in 2016?
She endorsed Bernie after she got pushed out of the primaries by Clinton.
Oh.
Because Bernie hadn't gotten pushed out of the primaries yet. And then she ran again, or tried to run again in 2020, and that's when they did the whole Syria, Assad's little princess and all that bullshit. Yeah, but anyways, okay. So, I'm done doing trucks and everything, so let's get prepped for phase 2. Talking about retarded as communists.
Yeah. Are you sure you don't want to keep in a lot of that stuff? Because a lot of that stuff was pretty good material.
What?
The stuff we've been talking about since.
Oh, I guess we can, but yeah, okay, we can.
Or we can or just clip it for a shorter thing later. Because we went a good 30
you can do
minutes.
that too.
Alright. It's a good 20, 30 minutes of stuff that most of it was useful.
Okay.
Alright.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Alright. Are you still recording?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, communists. All I gotta say is kill a commie for mommy, I guess. Yeah, it's really funny because the whole communist thing, like, I was really over the whole, like, Cold War fucking sentiment, but now I'm sitting here and I'm like, holy shit, you people are just fucking terrible people. So now I'm just like, no, fuck it. Like, bring back McCarthy.
Yep.
It's like, fuck.
Hashtag McCarthy did nothing wrong.
Hashtag McCarthy did nothing wrong.
We owe that man an apology.
Yep, that we do.
But, so what you got going on right now? So Halsey and this guy, Hazaldine, or Al Hammond, or whatever the fuck his name is, he's trying to personify himself as like a good Arab or some shit like that. Why he has the name Hazaldine or whatever. The other communists within the Communist Party of the United States of America, the CPUSA, they call him Infracell, apparently, because his podcast is called Infrared. And apparently they call him Infracell. I was having a good laugh at that. They fucking hate by the way, I just want to make this very clear. The CPUSA and the ACP fucking hate each other. Like, they despise one another. Now,
why do they hate each other?
So what it seems to come down to is basically it's this whole concept of MAGA communism. So the idea being that, communism good, MAGA good, let's mesh the two together and form this abomination of fucking unprecedented fucking degree. And it's like, no, go fuck yourself. It's basically communist populism, even though communism is not populism by any stretch of the imagination.
Communist populism. That almost sounds like a mutually exclusive term.
Indeed.
Yeah, exactly. But what you end up having is so apparently back in 2020, and I did not have any history on this whatsoever. I just got a rundown of the majority of it the past couple days after this whole shit show, because Halsey and Has do this, which we can call him Has Been and be more appropriate for his fucking name. But Halsey and Has do this debate the other day. Me and Stoner were there, and it was a fucking shit show because Has is sitting there and he's like hardcore appealing to MAGA. Like, he is trying, like, everything he's saying is an appeal to MAGA across the fucking board. And then he basically, he straight up says, oh, we need to take these people and put them in camps in Alaska. And then he's going like, oh, we need to make it so that everybody has enough time in their day to pursue their dreams. So we need to reduce the work week to, like 7 hours a week or some stupid shit like that. So on and so forth.
It was like you go work an hour in the mines, and then you go work an hour in the factory, and then the rest of the day is yours. That's pretty much what Paz, our dumbass, was talking about.
But it was very much an appeal to, like, he was trying to appeal to run down, hardworking individuals that are just they're fucking they've been working 80-hour weeks and they're just fucking run down like a motherfucker. That was his full appeal. And it was like, okay, dude, this feels weird. Like, I am one of those guys that has had to do 80-hour fucking work weeks because I had to. I've done that grind. I've seen it and it destroyed me. But at the same time, what you're telling me is like, oh, I'm gonna make it so you don't have to do that. I'm like, okay, how are you gonna do that? And he didn't offer any actual fucking, like his whole thing was literally, we're just gonna figure it out. And it's like, that's not a fucking platform, bud. Okay, whatever. But his the followers were the fucking cream of the crop when it comes to communism. They came in and they straight up started trying to say that Halsey was defending 2008. Which, by the way, gonna say this right now, 2008, the recession, I'm happy for because it blew up a bunch of bad companies. What I'm pissed about is the fact that the U.S. government bailed out shit.
Right.
I'm pissed about the golden parachutes, not the recession. Because the recession happening needed to happen because of all the bad money. But the golden parachutes were the problem. I digress anyways. So they're just flying off the fucking handle. Just fucking full kilter in the chat. It was a fucking shit show. And it was just fucking hilarious. So, getting back to, course of events. So back in 2020, there was this bifurcation of the CPUSA. And basically, the people who would eventually become the ACP were pissed because the CPUSA was basically full-throated, throwing its support behind the Democrats. Well, I guess I should say in front of the Democrats because they were down on their knees. But anyways, this then turns into a continuation of just, them arguing, and then finally it culminates in 2024, where you have the actual split, where the ACP bifurcates away from the CPUSA completely, and the ACP forms into its own entity. And so, it starts in 2020, it works its way through to 2024, and then, here we are. Now, what's really fucking weird about the whole thing is the fact that, you listen to, if you watch the video that I posted earlier that Stoner and me watched, the guy he's like, we were telling you this, we told you so, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, yeah, you're literally using the language that turns people off. Bigotry and misogyny and yada yada fucking yada. He's doing the full gambit of the left, of leftist language. It was just super fucking weird that, to hear one communist bashing other communists as hard as they did. Now, here's the fun part. You'll notice if you look at how ACP follower or members and supporters talk about CPUSA, they refer to the CPUSA people as Trotskyites. And then the ACP people refer to themselves as actual Marxist Leninists, and so on and so forth. And I was like, what the fuck? What is going on? It is the weirdest shit ever.
communist infighting is not a new thing. It's as old as communism. You know.
Yeah, true. But it was just it's such a strange thing to see. Now, fast forward, so there, in that video, the guy details how the ACP, there's been some high level resignations from the ACP, and the ACP's in trouble, and so on and so forth, yada yada yada. But here's the thing: is at the end of the day, it's really to our advantage, because it's like, okay, so you guys bifurcated, meaning you got a bunch of y'all over here, you got a bunch of y'all over here.
It's better than all of them in one place.
I'm gonna make like Napoleon and defeat in detail.
Yep.
Like holy shit! Like, this is a golden opportunity. And it's really strange, again, to hear the ACP talk. Again, it was an appeal, like, literally the entire time Haz was talking, he was appealing to white working men the entire time. And then the CPUSA, they are appealing to, like, BIPOC and shit like that. And it's just like, what the fuck is happening here? It's just the strangest fucking dichotomy I've ever seen. It's kind of like with Groypers and the TradCons. It's just as weird. And it's like, okay, I guess. Can we just put you all in the same trench, or should we be nice and put you all in your individual trenches? But yeah, so really weird situation the past few days, where it's just been like, again, me and Stoner, we've been shitting on the fucking ACP, and they've come out of the fucking woodwork. They have come out of the woodwork so hard. They love going after Poe. They keep calling Poe a tranny, which is hilarious to me. I'm like, well, I know for a fact she's not a tranny. She happens to be almost 15 weeks pregnant now. Just saying.
Indeed.
Oh, Jesus Christ. But one of the discussions that, I've been having with a couple other people, and Stoner's, tacitly been involved with this discussion, is, what kind of effect can these guys have? Because, Haas did the bad thing. Haas brought attention to the movement. When you're waging an insurgency, you don't bring attention to your movement publicly. You bring it very clandestinely. You doing humanitarian work, doing this, doing that. You work in the shadows. You're not overt. You're covert. Well, he brought himself to light, and he brought his whole fucking organization to light. And it was, the discussion has been like, how do we handle these people? How do we deal with them? And while I would love to, write the prescription for helicopter rides, unfortunately, we can't do that yet.
Yet.
Keyword, yet. But in the current environment, in the permissible environment that we're in, or semi-permissible if you go to one of their strongholds, because unfortunately, let's face it, Antifa, they've already killed people. They've, gone to Portland and whatnot to counter-protest. So I can imagine going to Dearborn and whatnot, I'd get shot too. But in these semi-permissive and permissive environments, how do we handle them? How do we counter them? Well, first and foremost, having your own propaganda arm. You have to counter the propaganda with propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
And like in the case of the ACP, they're appealing to white working class men. Like that's the group that they're appealing to as much as possible in an attempt to garner the true fighters of society. Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. I don't care what you have to say. Sorry, if it ain't a white working man or a black working man, you ain't filling the military.
Nope.
Sorry, Latinos, you're not included in this because there ain't enough of you. There's a lot of you, but there ain't enough of you. So it's definitely an appeal to, the downtrodden in an attempt to build their numbers, because they need a substantial number of men that are capable to be under arms. Now, the issue being is that, well, communists tend to not appeal to those types of men, and thus they have an issue. So that's why they've latched onto the whole MAGA thing. Now, how to counter that is, well, by simply just doing it better. Like, for example, and this is something that I've kind of been advocating on my front, and I'm actually considering starting up a YouTube channel for it, doing poor man's food. One of the, like, I'm a big food guy. Like, I know food, I understand, the history of food and so on and so forth. So I'm like, I could teach people very easily how to cook on the cheap and make food that keeps really well, that they can use for certain things. Like, say, so for example, you guys ever heard of ship's biscuit, or the modern version hardtack? You ever heard of it?
Of course.
Mitch should have heard of this. Serving on the 3 masts that he used to serve on. Oh, come on.
He's not that old. He was on the Olympia during the Spanish-American War.
Hey, Stoner. You do realize that the Olympia was a 3-mast, right?
Oh, when you said 3-master, I thought you were talking about sailing ships, not steamships.
Oh yeah, it still had a triple mast. It just didn't have any sails on it.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about sailing ships. But anyways, getting back to Hazal dumbass. He really let the cat out of the bag when he talked about sending people to happy camps in Alaska.
Well, we'll get back to that here in a second. But the point is that, if you want to appeal to, the downtrodden, teach the downtrodden how to live, how to improve their lives, and hardtack is, or ship's biscuit hardtack, whatever name you want to use, most people would use the term hardtack, is hilarious in that I'm sitting here and I'm starting to realize myself, I'm like, why haven't I been making this? Because at the end of the fucking day, I make a fucking beef stew, grind up a bunch of fucking hardtack, and throw it in there as a thickener and a filler. And it's like, it's simple things like that you can do en masse, that are low energy, low intensity activities that can make your life really fucking simple. Hobo stew, there's another like Depression era dish that is escaping me right now. But, different little things like this that are just like, these should be part of the lexicon of the working class. And we've unfortunately gotten away from that, to the point where it's like, okay, you're overspending like a motherfucker on food. I can tell you for a fact that I'm probably overspending on food quite a bit. Now, unfortunately, I have a pregnant girlfriend, so I have to kind of match the food to her cravings, but it's like, at least I'm not spending a gratuitous amount on food. Mm-hmm. And mind you, you can still eat healthy. Like, I eat a shit ton of beef stew and chicken soups, and I'm talking like soups of all regard with chicken in them. Like, it could be fucking taco soup, chicken noodle soup, fucking this, that, and the other. I do a bunch of pan-fried fucking Asian style chicken and stuff like that. Like, I eat really fucking healthy, like, across the board, and it's really easy shit to make. And it's just, that's how you start appealing to the working class, where it's like, I'm going to offer you the knowledge to be able to do shit yourself and actually do something that's going to benefit you. Like, for example, the whole hardtack thing, I've decided, like, I'm actually going to the store right after I get off work. I'm gonna go and pick up a bag of flour. I'm gonna make a shit ton of fucking hardtack just to store back, just constantly, you know. I'd say probably every month or so, just take a day and bake a shit ton of fucking hardtack and just keep storing it back. Because what is it? You know, do you guys understand what hardtack is meant to be?
Yeah, is it meant to like last for like it's meant to never go bad and to be able to like
Well,
sustain
yeah.
you as long as possible?
It's a food preservation technique. It's meant to be able to take your flour, turn it into something that you can carry with you easily, and then use in the field. That was the whole concept behind it. But at the same time, imagine this: you walk in, hey, I don't want to make chicken and dumpling soup for the kids because that shit fucking takes forever to fucking make. I don't want to have to get all messy after working. It's like, okay, fucking take a fucking plastic bag, put a bunch of fucking hardtack in it, fucking smash it up. You know, I'm sorry if you don't have a mallet. That's a problem. A good kitchen has three things: a knife sharpener, a fucking mallet, and a fucking cheese grater. If you don't have those three things, you don't have a proper kitchen. But you know, you break it up into decent sized pieces. You know, not too small, but decent sized pieces. Drop it into a basic chicken noodle soup, or just a straight chicken soup. There's your chicken and fucking dumplings. Easy shit that you can do, that you can literally do mass preparation of it, and as you said earlier, it doesn't really go bad if you're storing it properly. So and it's different things like that. But then carrying on. Don't do shit like talking about putting people in camps, just to go back to, Stoner's point. The dude literally advocated for arresting people that work in the financial system, which, by the way, he's not just talking about, the fucking CEOs and the investment bankers. He's talking about the banking class, which includes, like, the dude or chick that you talk to behind the counter at the bank.
Right, the tellers.
He's talking about those people. The people that you literally cannot get mad at because they've never done anything fucking wrong. They're just there fucking exchanging money and fucking putting money in your account and so on and so forth. They're facilitating your ability to live. And he's talking about them too. He's talking about nationalizing all the banks under one central bank. Oh, by the way, he wants to get rid of the Fed and then create a super, public equities bank. Oh, by the way, we've already, confirmed at this point in time that private formation of capital is much stronger than public formation of capital. But hey, you know what? The EU is a great example of, banking.
And don't forget, he also pretty much wants to tear down our current big government and replace it with an even bigger government of his liking.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the thing, is that at the end of the day, that was his whole point. Is like, let me reform the government in my image. That's literally the ACP, and mind you, the commie whose video I was watching talking about the ACP, he basically confirmed it through several things that he said. It's not even, oh, they're a cult of personality. No, it was other things that he was talking about, that it was like, oh yeah, this is in fact a cult of personality built around Haas. Now, mind you, Jackson Hinkle, who is the poster child, it's not even really meant to be his cult of personality. Haas is the one in the background. So literally, you have Lenin, Henkel, and then you have Stalin, Haas. And it's like, weird. Oh, what's that? There's good evidence to suggest that Lenin died of poisoning? Weird.
Wonder who could have done that.
I'll be honest with you. The way I've been seeing Jackson Hinkle talk, I would not put it past him. if he thinks he can get away with it.
No, I'm saying Oz poisons Jackson Hinkle to get rid of it.
That too.
I would not object.
Well, I want to put them both in the trench.
Yes.
Let me put them both in the trench, damn it. Anyway, but then again, going back to the whole propaganda thing, my microcosm talking about food, with all the different recipes and everything that you could fucking do that are on the cheap, and I mean on the fucking cheap, across the board, that are fucking delicious, then you start talking about how to do finances and how to do this, how to look for, like honestly speaking, what I would love to see? Somebody who actually knows how to look for a job just start a channel about how to find a job. Literally just start a channel about that. Just a random YouTube channel. It's like, hey, so this is how you write a resume. Hey, this is how you go to an interview. There's some nuance here. Do this, and this. If the interviewer's like this, then crack a joke. So on and so forth. Shit like that. Stuff that actually matters to the working man. Things that actually make the working man better. Rather than this whole platitude about how the workers must unite to seize the means of production and shit like that. Because, mind you, most of the working class is sitting there like, I don't own this. This isn't mine. I'm just here. Doing a job.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just very strange actually listening, because that's the thing, is I don't often listen to a communist actually give their spiel, because it's like, no, your mentality and your ideas are fucking retarded 99% of the time, so why would I bother listening to you? And then actually listen to them, and I'm like, holy shit, no, it's not 99% of the time, it's 100% of the time, maybe even 101% of the time, and we're accounting for the dead guy over there for the 1%, because he died of boredom.
Yep.
He had a brain aneurysm. All right, sorry about that.
No worries.
But damn, now I got food on the brain, and I just want to talk about food and recipes and shit that I want to make. Fuck. And that's the thing, is it's hilarious, because it's like, oh hey, and this is another thing, is a lot of the shit that he talked about in that podcast, I'm like, okay, so how much would you raise my taxes by? Because I already lose $350 a fucking paycheck, or a paycheck to taxes. How much higher are my taxes going to go? Can you answer that question, Haas? Can you answer that one? Because as it stands right now, here in the U.S., I pay the least amount of taxes than anywhere in the fucking world. Mm-hmm. And I would be even better off if I lived in somewhere like Texas or Florida.
Yeah.
So, what's up, bud? How much are you going to raise my taxes by? Because as soon as, and mind you, that's not something that he would be able to talk about, because it would alienate the working class.
Yeah.
And it would completely destroy his credibility with the working class. There's a reason why the working class has flocked to the MAGA movement, because they want lower taxes. Which, by the way, I don't know, but I'm getting a feeling that this year's tax rate is probably going to be around the 18% mark, and then the year after that, it's probably going to hit the 15% mark, somewhere in that region.
That would be nice.
If everything works out the way I think it's going to.
What's it currently at?
So it's, I pay about 21 to 22%.
Damn.
Better than you, bud.
Surprisingly, not by that much. I'm actually kind of surprised.
Well, that's the thing, is, how much do you make?
Right. Let's see.
Because I come in at $45,000 a year, roughly.
Right. No, so I remember, and it's been roughly the same since, but like when I first got a job, like almost 10 years ago, and I was making minimum wage, my taxes were still 22, 23, 24% of the total paycheck every 2 weeks. And I'm
Yeah,
not
but
sure. Is it the same in the U.S. or is it just that you're up in a higher income bracket now?
Well, no, it's determined by your income bracket. The
Right.
next income bracket, isn't until like I think 55 or 56 or something like that.
Right. Like, if you were making minimum wage in the U.S., roughly what do you think your tax rate would be?
Oh, if you were making like hard minimum wage and you were only working 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
Okay, so so state minimum wages are usually higher.
Right.
You would get taxed at that, 22 range, or actually no, it'd probably be shit. I don't remember because I think it's like 35,000 and lower or something like that. It's like 20, maybe 19 to 20% or something like that.
Oh, that's a lot higher than I thought it would be. Because, as I said, when I was making
Well,
$10 an hour in Canada, I was
that-
being like maybe only a couple percent higher.
Well, that's the thing though, is that then you take into account like, oh, hey, you're within the bracket to apply for this and apply for that and so on and so forth. So that's the thing is that, you get a lot of extra support. Like literally they incentivize, like in the current system, in the current framework, they incentivize making less money. Because then you are able to apply for a bunch of different things. Like, for example, the only reason why Poe was able to apply for Medicaid, to be completely frank, and this is the thing, is and she needs to call in and ask them some questions about what they want, because they want proof of income. Well, okay, do you want my proof of income or do you want her proof of income? Because we're not married. So technically speaking, she's living with me, but we're not married. So technically my income doesn't apply to her in any tax code. And that's what Medicaid is based off of, is tax code. So you can't really use my tax information for her. Now, if we were married, it'd be a totally different fucking ballgame.
Right.
So it's like she doesn't have any income, so she can't show proof of income because she doesn't have any. So it's a weird situation. But they like for example, the child income earned income credit. Like if you're using that and you're also using head of household and whatnot, like next year my taxes are going to be fucking wild. I'm probably going to get like $4,000 back.
Nice.
Like my tax income, or my tax return next year is going to be fucking ridiculous because I'm going to, be able to actually do that. But it's like,
the way they work, the federal taxes is basically after they figure up your taxable income and then take away standard deduction that the government gives you. That's what they call your adjusted gross income. The way it's set up now is the first $10,000 of that you pay 10% taxes on it, and then from they may have moved that up to 12,000 now, and then from there, from like 10 or 12,000 up to, I believe it's around about 45,000 now. That's taxed at like 12%. Once you go above that say around 45,000 cutoff, anything above that all of a sudden jumps up into the 22% tax bracket.
Oh, real quick. Okay. So yes, thank you for saying that, Mitch, because I'm taking my total taxes into account when I say 22%. That's all the taxes involved. I'm talking federal, state, county, city, so on and so forth. Like everything taken into account, I pay about 22% taxes. So yes, because I'm technically below. My real income is probably somewhere around the 44,000 range. So I'm right below that next tax bracket. Whereas that, as soon as I go over that next tax, oh god, dude, it would suck. It would suck so hard.
Don't you just like the government disincentivizes you from making more money?
Oh yeah, disincentivize anybody from trying, and that's the fun part, is that the argument we make is totally different than what the communists make. They make the argument, oh, they're hoarding your labor, they're hoarding your time and energy and yada, and it's like, no, they're stealing what they owe us. That's the difference between the argument. They're stealing from us what they owe us for our time and energy and effort.
Yes.
That's what they're doing. So we need to stop them from stealing. So we change the fucking tax laws, you fucking lemmings.
Yes. It's not the fault of the business people why you're poor. It's that you're having a quarter of your income almost stolen from you every fucking week or 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's not the businessmen. It's the government employees stealing from you.
Yes.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, there's times that I have seen guys, talk to them to where they only got something like a 50-cent an hour pay raise.
Yeah.
And then after a few months, they go back to their boss and ask them if they can give back that 50-cent pay raise, because that 50-cent pay raise all of a sudden threw them into the next higher tax bracket, where suddenly they were having to pay a crap load more money in taxes, and they were actually losing money.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's why, for example, Jeff Bezos only collects a paycheck from Amazon of $85,000 a year.
Yep.
Or 80,000. Sorry, 80,000. Because then he pays the income on that and then gets stock options.
Mm-hmm.
All of his net worth is tied up in stocks because he doesn't want to have to pay taxes. That's why they're so desperate to get unrealized capital gains taxes and things. Which, by the way, capital gains taxes are as unethical as they come, because it's like, I'm literally putting effort into building up this thing, and you're saying, oh, you shouldn't have that.
Yeah, you're being punished.
Yeah,
you're being punished for trying to build up the thing. Right? If
Yep.
you build it up, nope. Now government gets their cut. Which is ridiculous.
Well, here's the thing. You're taxed on your paycheck. You get taxed when you spend the money. You have an inheritance tax that you have to pay when someone passes away. And as you just mentioned, the capital gains tax. And not to mention, like, where applicable, grocery taxes, property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. No, you're taxed. Here's the fucked up part: is you're taxed 7 to 8 times, depending on where you live. You're taxed 7 to 8 times on your income by the time you're fucking done. And what does that leave you with? Pennies on the fucking dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Pennies.
Yep.
If that.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely fucking horrendous. Like right now, I would not be able to afford to buy a house for one reason and one reason only. Because I can't pay the fucking property taxes.
Mm.
Which is why I would love to live in a place like Florida, for example, where homestead law. Fuck you. You can't take my house.
What is the homestead law?
Homestead law is basically, it protects your actual household, your actual domicile, protects it from seizure by the county government for
That's
unpaid taxes.
Oh, that's good.
And that's the thing, is like, at the end of the fucking day, I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't remember the last time that a fucking employer fucking stole money from me. I remember the last time the government did.
Yeah. When was the last time your employer took your house from you? I don't remember that happening.
Exactly.
Right? But now, if you don't pay your taxes, the government fucking takes your house or your car, or if you're Alex Jones, you're a fucking cat.
Wait.
They tried to steal. They tried to take his cat from him because they said that they alleged that because it was a fancy breed of cat. They alleged that he was stowing money away in his cat. You know.
I would have thought it would have been something like them claiming it was an exotic breed of cat, that he needed an exotic animal license to be able to own the cat. But saying he was hiding money in it.
Well, he wasn't literally storing money in the cat, but the argument was because it was an expensive, fancy breed of cat. In order to hide money from, like, he bought the cat as an asset rather than just as a pet. Right? So they were gonna try to take his cat.
I've never known a cat in my life that I would call an asset. I've called them plenty of other things, but asset was not one of them.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yes.
And that's the point, is that at the end of the fucking day, like, again, I don't want to replace the fucking unwieldy piece of shit government I have with another unwieldy piece of shit government that is more likely to try to shoot me. Like,
Yes.
like at the end of the fucking day, it's like, fuck you, bud.
Yeah. And just similarly, although we have discussed this before, you know what another thing your employer has never done? Broken into your house, taken your pet, and euthanized them. I would say that to some people in New York. And
Bro,
Yeah.
okay.
Hashtag a certain squirrel.
yes.
So it's actually really funny that you bring that up, because I don't remember who did, but a big account shared something along the lines of, you know, why do you support a government that beheaded a pet squirrel?
Mm-hmm.
And people are sharing it like they didn't behead the squirrel, blah blah blah, so on and so forth, yada yada, just freaking the fuck out. And I'm like, how do you test for rabies?
Right. You have to get to the brain.
Uh-huh. What's the easiest way to get to the brain?
Lopping the head off.
Yep. You take the head off, you turn it over, and take your sample from underneath the skull instead of trying to drill into the skull. Mm-hmm. This is why when everybody was like, they killed the fucking squirrel, and everybody was like, they didn't kill the squirrel, they just confiscated it. They're going to release the squirrel into the wild. And then it's like, no, because they said they were going to test for rabies. The test for rabies involves killing the animal.
Yes.
So yes, they in fact fucking beheaded the squirrel and the fucking raccoon.
Mm-hmm. You can't forget Fred.
Never forget Fred. That fucking milkshake loving motherfucker. Mm-hmm. Brilliant, man. Brilliant. Good taste. Mm. Anyways. God damn it. Fucking dude, every time fucking the whole Peanut and Fred situation gets brought up, I want a clip of ammunition and me little Armalite.
Yep.
Anyways. Now I'm getting heated. Fuck. Now I'm like, I want to fight something.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put it this way. I got to spend 8 months in 1977 and 1978 going through, like, you know, prototype, the, land-based plant training for the, Navy nuclear power program in upstate New York around Saratoga Springs. I have no desire whatsoever to return to that place. I had my fill of New York many moons ago.
Yep.
And I want to remember it the way way I last time saw it in my rearview mirror.
No, it's literally one of those. It's one of those situations where, again, going back to the whole government thing, I do not want to replace the piece of shit government that will shoot me with another piece of shit government that's more likely to shoot me.
Yep.
Sorry. If I'm gonna have a fight, I'm gonna have a fair fight. And that involves a lot of V and L-shaped ambushes.
Yep. As long as human beings are involved, you are never going to have a perfect system of government, because there's always going to be somebody trying to game the system for their own benefit. The only thing you can do is aim for the system of government that ends up working best for everyone involved.
That's definitely not the ACP.
No.
Absolutely.
But I like to do a side profile on Henko and that dumbass guy.
I do need to bring up a topic that is going to be a little touchy.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to expand further on this in a video. I actually sent a message to Halsey. I would love to get him in on here and actually have him part of the conversation. But it's the connection between the communists and the Arabs, or the Islamists. And it's that whole and the weird dichotomy that is definitely between the ACP and the Islamists. Because Jackson Hinkle, Haas, and Chris, the three big players, all went out to Nasrallah's fucking funeral.
Right.
They were all fucking there. They were all hanging out with the fucking. They were hanging out with Hezbollah. They were hanging out with the Houthis. They were hanging out with all these people. And it really, 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 really raises a fucking red flag for me. Because at the end of the fucking day, it's like, okay, I do not like the fact that the Saudis and the U.S. were bombing the shit out of fucking Yemen. I don't like it. But at the same time, I can be like, they're not good people. I don't have to like them to disagree with the bombing of them. And then with Hezbollah has been a problem for years. And I don't like what happened to Gaza. Doesn't mean I don't approve of what happened on October 7th, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a situation where I'm like, okay, what are the chances? Because right now, these motherfuckers, they're trying desperately to get the GRM started. They are trying to hardcore, and I should explain real quick. So you have the GRM, the global radicalization movement. The whole purpose being is the simultaneous radicalization of the entire Islamic faith into basically a multi-front jihad. This whole concept that has been spun and spun and spun for years by different groups. And the fact that there is a potential connection between the ACP and the GRM fucking scares me. Especially given the fact that Haas is an Arab and lives in Dearborn, fucking Michigan.
Is he a Muslim?
I'm pretty sure he is. He's Arabic, so I assume that he is.
But isn't communism like a specifically atheistic movement?
No. Stalin learned his lesson. There's a reason why Stalin stopped trying to repress the churches, because he understood you can't. And with the Islamists, if you tried repressing them, they would kill you. So it's just not a feasible tactic. That's why communism has kind of shifted in that regard. The only reason why the Chinese have gotten away with repressing the Muslims in China is because the Muslims are a minority. And nobody's willing to help the Uyghurs because the Uyghurs are kind of seen as a fringe group that nobody really likes anyways. Like, for example, the Pashtun fucking hate them.
Right.
The Pashtun fucking despise the Uyghurs. So, it's kind of, in the case of the Chinese, they've kind of gotten lucky in the fact that they have a group that they can repress without much pushback. But the fact that the ACP has this overt connection with the GRM and the whole axis of resistance, so-called, really puts it into perspective that these people are fucking dangerous. Like, absolutely fucking dangerous. Because it's like, okay, who are you helping across the border, bud? Who are you helping getting into the U.S.? Who are you potentially training with, et cetera, et cetera? Because again, we know these types. We know that they're training. We know that they're organizing and they're equipping and they're preparing. We know they are. So who are they working with? And it's a discussion that is going to be incredibly tepid for most people. Most people are going to be like, oh, but, and it's like, no. Who are they working with? Now, I wouldn't be surprised to find out the ACP is under the fucking government microscope right now, because, you know, again, Jackson Hinkle hasn't come back into the U.S. yet. The fact that this is in the U.S., I think the only reason why he is because he is a U.S. citizen, and the fact that he lives in Dearborn, he's kind of sheltered a little bit. Right. But it's like, you went to a Hezbollah funeral, the biggest Hezbollah funeral there's ever been, and you're alive? Dude, count your lucky stars. So, it's just a...
I hate to say this, but maybe the fat guy was right in that Jackson Hinkle needs to fear the buzz of American drones.
Well, that's the thing, is at the end of the day, you know, Ryan McBeth, he basically straight up proved that he doesn't give a fuck about anything. He has no principles. We're coming at it from the perspective of, it's like, okay, these guys are a potential threat. We're not going to just go and overtly fucking take them out for no good reason, but we need to potentially be prepared for contingencies. See, there's a difference between how we're discussing things and how we're thinking versus how Ryan McBeth is thinking. He's thinking, oh, I can just kill you and it's no problem. It's like, yeah, it's a fucking problem, bud.
Technically, he does have free. Talking about Jackson Hinkle and Camel Jockey. Technically, they do have free speech rights, but where they're starting to cross the line.
No. It doesn't. This doesn't count. Being at that Hezbollah gathering does not count. That's providing material support to the enemy.
Free speech.
I was getting to that.
Free speech is only reserved for humans, not communists.
That's a human right, not a subhuman right.
Yes.
Commies are not people; they're state property, and they should be treated as such.
Correct.
All right, so
yeah, I mean, if they're
just go ahead, Stoner. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, they're doing all that stuff with known enemies of America. Then I sure as shit hope that the government's keeping a close eye on them and getting ready to bust them if they get out of line.
Okay, so real quick, just because he finally messaged me back. So the 24th, when we record, we are going to be doing the episode with Halsey.
Very nice.
And that'll be the 24th at 6 p.m.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Oh, speaking of communists, see the little news story to where Tim Walz was trying to give a hold some kind of a meeting or give a speech there in the state capitol in Minnesota, and he actually got booed off the stage by a bunch of veterans.
I did not see that, but nice. Um,
They basically called him a coward to his face.
Sounds about right. You don't.
So
You
did
don't
he
want.
So did he literally get booed off the stage, or was he still talking despite the boos?
He was trying to talk. They kept yelling him down. It looked like he finally just gave up and left.
Yeah, one thing you don't want to do in front of. One thing you don't want to have done when you're in front of veterans is to have committed an act of stolen valor.
Wait, who are we talking about?
Tim
Yeah,
Walz.
Tim Walz.
He did not, in fact, fight in any wars. He claims he did. Pretty sure that's stolen valor.
You notice how what's his fucking name? Nance, the black guy from Ukraine.
Malcolm Nance, yeah.
Malcolm Nance, yeah. You notice how he did one speaking engagement here in the U.S. and hasn't done a single one since.
Yep.
Because he got fucking accosted like a motherfucker by some dudes dudes from the military who were like, "Hey, shitbag, we know exactly who the fuck you are and we know exactly what you've said. Shut the fuck up before we beat your ass."
Based.
Yeah, there's
Curiously enough, that's what happened to Tim Walz too. Besides calling him a coward, you could hear one gentleman quite clearly yelling at him, said, "Shut your fucking mouth."
Based. Too bad for old Tampon Tim.
Well, here's the fucked up part, and this is the thing that I kind of want to end on, is you look at how, like, again, like, one of these commies was calling me a fucking liberal because that's their mindset, is that anybody liberal and right is the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not a communist, you are the enemy.
Yes.
And they even say socialists are the enemy. Like,
Hell,
if you're a social democrat, you're the enemy.
Hell, even if you're a communist, but a different type of communist, you're the enemy.
Oh yeah, yeah. And it's really eye-opening to realize that these people are so fucking gone and so fucking unhinged that finally they've gotten to the point where it's me against the world and I must control the world. And it's like, yeah, that hasn't worked out for everybody else who's tried it, bud.
Yep. Just
saying. That's an energy that tends to rub people the wrong fucking way, and they tend to, well, let's just say this. My Guido side was looking for lampposts. Actually, okay. So I actually have one more thing that I'd love to bring up. So I was in this space, random guy that I stumbled across. One of my mutuals was in the space at the time, and so I just jumped in the space. And first and foremost, anybody who tries to over-regulate their space with like, oh, you talked longer than 2 minutes, that's a problem. I fucking hate those spaces. I was like, okay, I'll let that go, but that's just annoying as shit. And I tend not to stay around. But there was this guy in here, in that space, that was like straight up. And mind you, the host of the space was like, "Oh yes, we're nationalist socialists." And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, okay. And the one guy specifically, he lives in San Francisco. And this guy, he was the most boisterous and the most just absolutely ridiculous individual I've ever fucking met. And mind you, he couldn't make points, he just had talking points.
Right.
And it was just one of those really weird situations where you're just like, I can't really engage with this individual because all they're going to do is shout a talking point. That's all they're going to do. And at one point in time, I just type in the comments of the space. This guy, I make the Guido and lamppost joke. This guy, this guy makes me want to. It makes my Guido side want to find a lamppost to, and I just left it at that. And he saw it. He got so mad. He got so fucking pissed. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, and I kept taunting him. Like I replied to that one, and I'm like, dancing in the rain, and just sat there, like, just taunting him, and I love doing that. By the way, like, I am a terrible human being in that regard. I love taunting people.
So
that's why, like, all these commies, I just love replying to their shit. Kill commies.
Yeah. So when you said he was a National Socialist, was this a neo-Nazi, or was this like what exactly did he mean? Was he like a
we were never really able to get into it. So definitely a little on the pro Hitler side, definitely. But we were never really able to get into it because the conversation always steered away from that. So it was like, it was just hilarious. It was like, really? Now what was funny is that I was in a space the very next day, and this chick comes in, and her name's Kelly. I started following her because she's got a good head on her shoulders, so I'm like, okay, I'll give you a follow. Well, they start having this conversation, and the conversation, and then mind you, the host, he's drunk, and easily, like, probably like 6-7 beers deep. Like, he's good at, or not beer, but I forget what he was drinking, but it wasn't beer. But he was at least like 6 or 7 drinks deep, and he was good at slosh. And the conversation was kind of just, it was kind of like, drunk driving. He's just kind of swerving along the road, just, can't keep it in a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, at one point in time, women come up, and he starts talking about this chick that he's interested in, and so on and so forth. And finally gets to the point where he kind of brings up the age of the individual in question. And me and Kelly, I was only half paying attention to the conversation because I'm like, okay, this is boring as fuck, but I don't have anything else to really do, so fuck it, I'll just surf on Twitter. And I start listening when the whole age thing came up, and he's like, oh yeah, she's give it a couple years, and we could probably make something happen, yada yada yada. I'm just like, oh no.
Oh dear. Is this the sort of thing where we need to rev up the good old wood chipper?
Well, I don't plan on going to South Africa, so.
But I was going to say, do I need to call up the Gators?
But no, so Kelly leaves right after this portion of the conversation ends. She just leaves. I leave as well, and I message her. I'm like, so that turned into a shit show because I knew exactly why she left. And she just goes off in DMs. And I was just like, yep, I knew exactly why you left. Like, it was just so weird, dude. I'm like, oh my God. Not only are you claiming to be a nationalist socialist, but you have a thing for a fucking 16-year-old. Like, God damn it. Oh, it was the age of consent. It was the age of consent discussion that fucking perked me up. I was like, that's what it was. As soon as that part of the discussion started, I was like, oh no.
Were these groypers?
Oh no, he's a libertarian.
Oh, well, libertarians are about like groypers in that respect.
Oh, it was just so. It was just so.
What's the meme about the ANCAP girlfriend? Something about her being under 18.
Jesus Christ! Of course, there's a meme for it. it's just one of those weird things where it's just like, why are you people like this?
Indeed.
Now, I'm not one of those guys that's gonna bitch at a dude. Like, if he's like 30 and he's dating an 18-year-old, I'm not gonna bitch at him. I'm like, yeah, well, do what you're gonna do, bud. Whatever.
Yeah.
But at
legal.
the same time, this guy's like 52, and he's interested in a 16-year-old, and it's like, brother.
No, actually, the real unfortunate thing is if this was in Canada instead, that would be legal.
Well, technically, I think the age of consent in South Africa is 16, so I guess it technically is legal there too.
Yes.
But it's just like, oh no, brother, no, we don't do that.
Yeah. It's just one other way Canada is like a shithole third world country. The age of consent. Much lower.
Well, which would be worse for Canada? Being considered a shithole third world country, or being considered gay North Dakota?
It's a hard one.
Mitch and a left heel with the RKO.
Yes. I think I'd rather be gay North Dakota just because it means you get rid of all the Pajeets.
Oh my god. Holy shit. Okay, I think we should end it on that one. That was a good stop.
Alright, fair enough. Bye everyone, see you next week.
Ciao.
Night.
I feel sorry. That felt like a little bit of a cheap shot there.
Dale,